A Marine infantryman suddenly bursts from behind a heavily fortified log shelter. The immediate distance to the armed Japanese defender stands at exactly 60 centimeters. This microscopic engagement window fundamentally alters the core mechanics of infantry combat. There is simply no physical space to swing a traditional rifle or deploy a bayonet. The heavy mechanical recoil of the Thompson submachine gun violently jolts through the raider's hands. He reflexively squeezes the trigger to neutralize the immediate threat before it can react. Without breaking his aggressive momentum, the Marine instantly continues his tactical movement toward the next cover. This chaotic close-quarters encounter unfolds on Makin Atoll in August 1942. It represents a fundamental shift in operational military doctrine. Occurring exactly 10 days after the massive amphibious landings at Guadalcanal, this specific raid relied on a completely different strategic foundation. Instead of deploying heavy surface armadas, the command deliberately inserted precisely 211 Marine raiders directly from submerged submarines. The dense tropical environment instantly compressed combat ranges from hundreds of meters down to a few extremely frantic paces. Every tactical aspect of this infiltration was shaped around the rapid suppressive capabilities of the Thompson submachine gun. Prior to this demanding operation, established military theorists had firmly dismissed the weapon as an outdated tool for trench warfare. That point-blank Thompson fire shattered the tactical calculations of the Japanese defense. 360 meters. At this exact range, garrison commanders planned to destroy any advancing infantry lines. The Riku Sentai, the Special Naval Landing Forces, built their entire island strategy around this specific distance. Their primary tool was the Arisaka Type 38 bolt-action rifle. A Japanese marksman tracks his target. He squeezes the trigger. The heavy metal bolt clacks back and drives forward, ejecting a spent brass casing into the dirt. He aims again without breaking his firing stance. The 6.5mm cartridge generated minimal recoil. This physical trait allowed the shooter to snap his sights right back onto the target in a fraction of a second. They drilled this mechanical sequence until it became pure muscle memory. This individual precision dictated the macro-scale island defense. Control the perimeter and hold the vital choke points. Force the opposing infantry to cross open terrain under methodical rifle fire. The tactical logic relied on exhaustion. Commanders calculated that any assault force would bleed out during the long coastal approach. Japanese tactical doctrine bet on slow, sniper-like accuracy. Officers believed it would always defeat fast, scattered suppression fire. The rate of accurate strikes mattered more than the sheer volume of lead in the air. The Japanese manual was written flawlessly, but it was designed for a completely different enemy. That 360-meter calculation shattered against the physical reality of the Pacific terrain. Command prepared for engagements on open fields, but dense jungles compressed the active front line down to just 3 meters. Planners designing the new raiding capabilities between late 1941 and early 1942 faced an environment with no European equivalent. Down among the thick mangrove thickets and heavy palms, the artificial defensive lines merged seamlessly into the forest floor. The towering canopy overhead blocked the moonlight, meaning nighttime firefights happened blind. Combat erupted at extreme close quarters, frequently just 1.5 meters. This environment physically eliminated the necessary time for aiming. Working a bolt mechanism became a fatal liability. A Marine holding the standard model 1903 Springfield rifle had time to fire. Exactly 1 shot. Lieutenant Colonel Evans Carlson understood the price of that single shot long before reaching the Pacific. He spent 2 years embedded with the 8th Route Army. Mao's guerrillas fought Japanese forces across mountainous forests where engagement distances shrank to almost zero. Military procurement favored long-range precision. Carlson realized that thick vegetation erased this advantage. Survival demanded a different approach. The weapon pouring the highest volume of lead into a confined space controls the fight. He returned from China with a firm tactical concept, drafting official reports based on his frontline observations. The officer then ignored standard infantry regulations. Carlson equipped his entire battalion with new high-capacity weapons. Before the war, heavy weapon mass meant a tactical flaw. In the night jungle, it became a survival tool. The core of this new, guerrilla-inspired arsenal was the Thompson Model 1928A1. The weapon weighed roughly 4.7 kilograms. The heavy wooden stock and solid steel receiver dragged on a soldier during long marches. But between two palm trees, that weight absorbed recoil. A Marine slammed a 20-round box magazine into the receiver. He leveled the barrel at the dark brush. He squeezed the trigger without looking down the iron sights. The chamber fed the .45 ACP cartridge. Each bullet weighed 230 grains. Muzzle velocity reached 274 meters per second. This heavy projectile delivered massive stopping power. It dropped a target immediately, even without hitting vital organs. A firefight in this dense environment lasted exactly 3 seconds. There was no time to aim. You simply pointed the barrel and held the trigger down. 800 rounds per minute turned technical accuracy into a secondary factor. The sheer volume of lead saturated the immediate zone. One officer's personal tactical decision completely outpaced official changes in military regulations. 500 yards stood as the gold standard for infantry survival. Even though John Taliaferro Thompson developed his submachine gun in 1919, its rapid fire eventually shattered this classic rifle dogma. Army officials evaluated early models inside quiet offices, feeling the heavy steel receiver and dense wooden stock. They found the mass impractical for long marches. The weapon went to storage. The official manual demanded engagements at 500 yards, a strict standard forged on the open fields and static trenches of the First World War. A submachine gun reached 50 yards. Army planners expected troops to fight across wide terrain using bolt-action rifles, while the Thompson found its actual clientele in city streets. Gangsters bought crates. The FBI armed its agents for close-quarters automobile ambushes. The military establishment viewed the heavy gun as a mere law enforcement curiosity. The arithmetic of combat seemed perfectly settled in the department offices. An 8-pound rifle matched the Thompson weight, but offered 10 times the effective range. However, these bureaucratic distance calculations entirely ignored the physical landscape of a Pacific jungle. A 500-yard engagement was the gold standard of survival. But under the Pacific canopy, that prized range became a liability. Open space calculations failed. On Guadalcanal, jungle vegetation choked visibility to 15 feet. Long-range ballistics turned to dead weight. Pure physics and timing took control. A scout spotted movement at 10 yards. The Thompson gunner pulled the trigger. The crack of short bursts sliced through the thick palm foliage. The weapon cycled at an 800-round theoretical rate. Firing at 200 rounds per minute, the gunner dumped a 20-round box magazine. A rifleman fired exactly one shot. He pulled the bolt back. He pushed it forward. A rifle squad lacked the time to deploy. A Thompson secured 10 yards in 3 seconds, while a rifle demanded 30. Those numbers stood as the exact boundary between survival and failure. The difference was a man's death. Evans Carlson took those critical seconds of dense fire and built a new tactical framework around them. He discarded traditional infantry coordination to form autonomous 3-man fire teams. This shift traced back to 1937, when Carlson embedded with Chinese communist guerrillas and watched isolated squads survive without artillery. His gung-ho concept demanded immediate local firepower at grenade-throwing distance. The Thompson provided the mechanical foundation for this philosophy. A single squad could now dictate a jungle ambush without waiting for heavy reinforcements. Merging this high-volume weapon with decentralized combat forged a strike force ready for the Pacific. This tactical union of automatic weapons and decentralized squads faced its first physical test in complete darkness. 211 raiders sat in rubber boats, closing in on Butaratari Island. It was August 17, 1942. The target was Makin Atoll. Behind the men sat the submarines USS Argonaut and USS Nautilus. These vessels stretched over 100 meters long, ranking among the largest boats in the Pacific Fleet. Yet their steel hulls imposed severe weight and space limits compared to standard landing ships. Command had to leave entire rifle sections behind. Carlson's strike force was degraded before it even hit the water. The plan demanded a precise pre-dawn strike on the radio station. The men were supposed to destroy the equipment and vanish. But the ocean dictated a different schedule. Heavy surf slammed into the formation. Water flooded half the outboard motors before the boats reached the shallows. The engines sputtered and went dead in the freezing water. The raiders grabbed their paddles. The tide scattered their rubber craft across a 300-yard stretch of sand. The concept of two coordinated assault waves disintegrated in the dark. By the time Carlson assembled enough shooters to push inland, the sun was rising. The Japanese garrison had already spotted the threat. Approximately 70 armed guards from the 62nd Unit held the base. They manned prepared coral bunkers. They controlled the choke points. The precise night operation collapsed, devolving into a daytime close-quarters battle on open ground. Once on the Butaratari shoreline, the American fast assault tactic collided with a rigid defensive perimeter. Yet the Japanese garrison launched no counterattacks. They waited inside camouflaged coral fortifications, allowing the Marines to walk directly into pre-registered fire corridors. The defenders channeled the attackers through narrow approaches, maintaining accurate rifle fire across the bare terrain. Sharp cracks of precision shots echoed over the exposed beach. Even if the raiders had carried the finest Garand rifles, the outcome would not have changed against entrenched troops. The initial push stalled completely, costing the lives of exactly 3 men. To break that lethal stalemate, Carlson pushed his Marines into the flanking tree lines, deliberately forcing the engagement range down to under 18 meters. Sergeant Clyde Thompson tore through the right flank, firing his weapon on the move. The jungle swallowed all visibility. He fired blindly into the green wall, letting lead density replace careful aiming. Wet palm leaves snapped and shredded under the incoming bursts. The physics favored the attackers here. A standard .45 caliber bullet weighed 15 grams. It carried tremendous momentum over short distances. That massive weight punched straight through the thick tropical brush without deflecting. Lighter rifle rounds easily glanced off branches and vines. The heavy pistol cartridge ignored the foliage entirely. It simply shattered whatever stood in its direct path. Thompson earned the first enlisted Medal of Honor of the war for this advance. His submachine gun cleared the immediate trench lines with kinetic force. But this weapon possessed strict limits. Later that morning, Thompson stepped into an open clearing. He lost his green cover. Accurate fire from a distant Japanese position dropped him instantly. The enemy fired from a range he could never reach with his heavy caliber. Despite his death on the exposed sand, the flanking maneuver succeeded. The penetrating power of the .45 broke the perimeter. Raider assault teams pushed deep through the jungle and turned the entire Japanese defensive center into a continuous kill zone. Breaking the defensive lines granted the raiders direct access to the main infrastructure targets of the garrison. 83 confirmed bodies of Japanese soldiers lay scattered across the compound. The assault team secured a complete tactical triumph, yet the extraction collapsed into logistical chaos. By afternoon, American forces eliminated the fuel stores and the seaplane base. They destroyed the radio station on Makin Atoll. This specific transmitter handled all communications for the Japanese defensive perimeter in the Gilbert Islands. The raid achieved its physical objectives. The withdrawal shattered their timeline. Heavy surf swamped the outboard motors of the rubber boats. Over 100 raiders spent an unplanned night stranded on the hostile beach. 21 Americans died or disappeared during the operation. The chaos left 9 men behind. The Japanese captured them, transferred them to Kwajalein, and executed them. Officers submitted post-action reports confirming the tactical effectiveness of close-quarters weapons. Those same rubber boats, abandoned on the sand, gave Japanese intelligence raw material for their own technical analysis. How did the garrison command evaluate this defeat? Through the waterlogged equipment lying on the shoreline, Intelligence officers walked along the tidal flats, inspecting the punctured rubber hulls. They recovered tactical documents soaked in seawater. The physical evidence pointed to a specific tactical error. Historically, the Imperial Japanese Army anchored its island defense on the Arisaka Type 38. This bolt-action weapon fired a 6.5mm cartridge. It provided long-range precision. The rifle dominated open terrain up to 400 meters. But the Arisaka required clear sightlines and time to aim. The recovered papers and the battlefield geometry revealed a critical flaw. Their defensive strategy held along the open beaches. It failed inside the dense palm groves. The American submachine gun dictated the outcome. The Thompson delivered high-volume fire at micro-distances where traditional marksmanship failed. Japanese tacticians drafted a new official recommendation. Island garrisons had to concentrate their forces in open sectors. They had to accept the jungle margins as contested zones. But this adjustment came too late. The raiders had already proven that the vegetation offered no neutral ground. It belonged to the attackers. The submachine gun stripped away the inherent advantage of a concealed defender. The rifle did not work there. Realizing the jungle's vulnerability, Japanese commanders requested the Type 100 submachine gun. The Special Naval Landing Forces needed this firepower. These elite Marines trained under rigid marksman protocols. They tried to adapt, but Japan lacked the manufacturing capacity to arm them. Orders went unfulfilled. Factories stamped out fewer than 30,000 units during the entire conflict. The elite troops specialized in coordinated beach assaults. Mud brawls broke their rules. Supply lines failed. Imperial headquarters abandoned the tactical overhaul mid-campaign. While Tokyo abandoned its tactical overhaul, American frontline units held onto their weapons against all logistical logic. Procurement tables demanded lighter gear. The Thompsons stayed anyway. Marines dragged these submachine guns through the deep mud of Guadalcanal. Heavy machined steel and polished wood swelled under constant tropical moisture. Men hauled the extra weight through dense vegetation. The campaign pushed into New Georgia. Here, combat happened at point-blank range. The weapon occupied a very specific zone. It existed for the exact space between sterile basic training and sudden death. Rifles required clear lines of sight. The Thompson operated in the blind spots. It shrank the Pacific battlefield down to mere meters. By early 1944, Command formally dissolved the specialized raider battalions. They distributed these experienced operators across regular infantry regiments. Veterans brought their close-quarters methodology with them. They passed the new doctrine to standard rifle companies. The elite formations vanished from the order of battle in 1944. But their lethal contact distance became the operational standard for the entire United States Marine Corps.